Hey friends! So today I am going to be attempting to read the most popular books on my TBR. When it comes to very popular, very beloved, very hyped books, I typically tend to steer very clear of them. Something about things that are popular and very hyped gives me anxiety. So I usually avoid them, but I wanted to actually challenge myself to read those extremely popular books that everyone loves, that everyone talks about, that everyone but me has read. So in order to begin, we actually need to figure out what I'm going to be reading in this video. Let's head over to my Goodreads account and see what actually are the most popular books that are on my TBR. I'm going to sort my want to read shelf by the number of ratings because I'm not looking for what are the highest rated books. I want to know what are the books that the most number of people have read. Oh my god, okay. I didn't really want to see the entire list, but I do see it. All right, so number one, the top book that has the most number of ratings is Educated by Tara Westover. This is a nonfiction book. It looks like it came out in 2018. I'm not the biggest nonfiction reader, and maybe I didn't realize how popular nonfictions are because this is extremely high. This has 1,541,564 ratings. That is crazy. That's very, very high. If we look in comparison to like something else, let's go to my red shelf. So like in comparison, New Moon by Stephanie Meyer has 1,900,000. What else? What has Fourth Wing has 1,600,000 ratings? That was a jump scare. It has the same number of ratings as Daisy Jones and the Six, The Song of Achilles. That's very high, that's very high. Maybe I just don't know how popular nonfiction is. So I added this to my TBR in 2021. I think this was a year that I was really trying to delve into nonfiction, and I remember that this one did sound interesting and it had been recommended a lot. So we have the first book that I will be reading with 1.5 million ratings. Next up, this one is no surprise. When I came up with this video idea, I had a feeling this book would pop up, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which has 700,125 ratings. This one, as we can see, I added to my TBR on April 13th, 2024, very recently, because I had kind of written off Brandon Sanderson a long time ago. I didn't think any of his books sounded interesting to me. I didn't think I would like them, and then I read Tress of the Emerald Sea and I loved it, and it kind of renewed an interest that I had in reading Brandon Sanderson's books. And from what I know, this is like the ideal starting place in his whole universe. So to compare this to the popularity of a book that I've read, this has a similar number of ratings to Heartstopper, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, Misery by Stephen King. It's actually very close to the number of ratings to Misery. Obviously all of those books are very different and have very different audiences. Just for my own sake, I'm comparing these things to the popularity of things that I have already read, just to give myself a general idea of how popular they are. So we have the second book that I will be reading, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, with 700,000 ratings. Next on the list, we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This has 621,083 ratings, which is not surprising. I know Neil Gaiman is very, very popular. Apparently, I added this to my TBR also April 21st, 2024. I think this was when I was going through my bookshelves and my unhaul, and I own this book, and I was like, oh, it's not on my Goodreads TBR. It has actually been on my TBR for a very long time. I've owned this book, I think, since it came out in 2013. And then to compare the popularity to something that I've read, it has a similar number of ratings to The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. Third book that I will be reading in this video is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman with 621,000 ratings. All right, next we have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This has 488,148 ratings. It came out in 2020, and I've had it on my TBR since November 11th, 2023. So it's interesting, a lot of these I added to my TBR very recently. As you can see, I'm not interested in very popular books often, and usually it will take me many years to finally decide that I want to read them. So to compare The Thursday Murder Club to something that I've read, it has a similar number of ratings to Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, Crazy Rich Asians, Heartstopper Volume 2, Red Rising, and this one's also not surprising. I know the series is very, very popular. So the fourth book that I will be reading is Thursday Murder Club with 488,000 ratings. That is my TBR for this video, and I own all of these books except for Mistborn. I used to own Mistborn. I used to own the trilogy, and then I unhauled them many years ago. So I'm gonna have to find that one from my library. But the other 3 books I already own, and I'm actually very excited about this. I feel like this is a good, like, well-rounded TBR. We have an epic fantasy book, a kind of magical realism novella, a nonfiction, and a mystery series. So the first book that I'm gonna be starting is Educated. This is a memoir about this girl who was raised pretty much like isolation. I believe they were Mormon. Her dad was very much like a doomsday, like scared of the government, kind of like conspiracy theorist. And they never allowed their kids to go to school, kept their kids like isolated, didn't really like go out in public. She was 17 the first time she set foot in a classroom. Born to survivalists in the mountains of Idaho, she prepared for the end of the world by stockpiling home-canned peaches and sleeping with her head for the hills bag. They never went to hospitals, they never went to doctors or nurses, and so this is all about her childhood, living and growing up in that environment. I'm excited to get into this. I'm not the biggest nonfiction reader, but the few times that I do pick them up, I tend to enjoy them. I do really like memoirs. Like the ones that I've read, I've loved. So this morning I finished Educated. I've been listening to the audiobook and I really enjoyed the audiobook. The audiobook is actually narrated by Julia Whalen, who is one of my favorite narrators. She does like all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, all of like Emily Henry. She does a lot, and I feel like I associate her voice with obviously like fiction books. That the whole time that I was listening to this, I kept having to remind myself, this is not fiction. It's a real story. These are real people. I just kept forgetting. And I feel like it very much reads fictional. Like, I don't know, it didn't read like a lot of memoirs that I've read. I think that the author did a really, really good job at writing it. It was very compelling. I really struggle when it comes to like nonfiction, especially memoirs, like with how to rate them or how to talk about them, because it feels weird to give a rating to somebody's life story. And it's like, how well did you entertain us with your trauma? So I don't know that I would give this a rating. I'll probably just give it like, it's a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. There were a couple things that I was like, I have some questions, just a couple things that didn't really make a lot of sense and that I would have liked them to be expanded upon. Just a couple things that I was like, I don't know, the dots weren't connecting fully. And maybe this is just a case of like, since it's a memoir and she's telling her own story, she wasn't really asking herself certain questions from like an outside perspective when it comes to clarifying things or understanding. But that's my only like small little critique. I'm sure she's done tons of interviews maybe answering a lot of the questions that I have, so I'll probably do a little Googling to see. But in terms of like a memoir and readability and enjoyment, I really enjoyed it. And also, I think if she ever writes a fiction book, I would probably pick it up, because if this is a testament to her writing skills, I think they're very good. I do wonder why this was so popular. I feel like this would be like a good book club book, so I'm assuming this was probably a lot of book club books when it came out. It just gives me that vibe of like celebrity book clubs, like Oprah and Reese Witherspoon, just like the general masses. I would assume a lot of book clubs read this book. Also, I will say, because I did not realize this going into it, but there is like there is physical abuse from a sibling. While I was listening to it, it was very disturbing and jarring, and there were a couple chapters that I will admit, in my little audiobook, I was pressing the 15-second button and like skipping ahead just a little. Made it to part 2 of Mistborn, but I thought that I would check in at every part of the book to give you guys like a little update, and I'm very happy to say that so far I'm really enjoying it. You know, this is one of those things where like, this has been so hyped to me for so long that I kind of like built it up in my mind as something that I wouldn't like, but I love it. I love it so far. I will say this first part was very much like setting up the scene. It was very, I won't say info dumpy, but nothing really happened plot-wise. It was just like learning the world, meeting the characters, setting up what we're gonna do. And I think now, going into part 2, I'm getting more into like the meat of the plot. I realized though that I never knew what the plot of this book was. I had no idea what this book was about. I knew that the magic system had to do with metals and like consuming metals and using them to like have powers. Other than that, like the actual plot of the book, no clue. No clue. So basically, this takes place in a world where it's like if the villain of every fantasy book you've ever read won and has been ruling over the world for thousands of years. So this world is being ruled by the Lord Ruler, who is immortal and has been in control for a very long time and has enslaved the people called the Ska. What's happening in the plot of this book is that there is this kind of rebellion, this uprising that is brewing, and we have a crew of like criminals who are banding together to take down the Lord Ruler. So far, the magic system is very interesting, very cool, a little complicated. I don't know that I fully have grasped it yet. Like I said, you have people who can manipulate specific kinds of metals. Most people who have this magic can only manipulate and use one type of metal, and each metal gives you a different power. Some of them enhance your senses, some of them allow you to manipulate other people's emotions. But then you have people called mistborns, which are very, very rare, and they are able to use all of the metals. And so our two main characters, Kelsier and Vin, they're both mistborns. And Kelsier is like this older guy, and Vin, I think, is like 16. She's a teenager, she's very young, and she didn't know that she's a mistborn. And so Kelsier has kind of taken her under his wing to train her and teach her. And that's essentially the plot that I know as of now. I'm really loving the dynamic between Kelsier and Vin. It's very much giving like older, kind of grumpy man with his adoptive daughter, which is one of my favorite tropes. I just love that. Also right now, I'm very, very curious about Kelsier's past. There's like little seedlings of like things that have happened in his past that I'm very interested in. And yeah, those are my thoughts so far. Like I said, not much in this first part really happened plot-wise. It was just a lot of like the characters talking to each other and learning about the world, setting everything up. But I think now we're gonna dive into the plot, I'm hoping. First impressions of the first like 150 pages, I'm enjoying it. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I can't believe I'm actually saying that I'm enjoying Mistborn. Okay, I just finished part 2 of Mistborn, and oh my god, this part was so good. I am sucked in. I'm hooked. I'm sat. I love it. This has like a heist vibe. So part 1 was very much them like setting up their plan for this heist that they're gonna do. And now we're enacting the plan. So Vin's main role in this is that she is going undercover in the nobility. So she's going undercover as like a noble lady, and she's attending all of these balls to spy on the nobility. Oh my god. This part was so good because she's at this ball and she ends up like sneaking off to this like balcony area, and when she gets to that area, there's this guy there and they have a little bit of banter. He's like, oh, why aren't you dancing with anyone? And she's like, I don't know how to dance. And he's like, yeah, me neither. We should dance sometime. And I'm like, why did this just turn into Bridgerton? And I'm live, laugh, loving. I'm like kicking my little feet. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the vision of like them having a romance, and I'm here for it. I love it. I have 100 pages left before I finish reading this book. Here are my thoughts. I love Vin. Vin is such a great main character. She's very interesting. I love how suspicious she is of everybody, almost to the point where it's like a detriment. And there's actually, like, this book is kind of funny. Like, there's a lot of funny moments which I wasn't expecting. Like the fact that Vin so aggressively hates reading. But like a big plot point of this book is that they found the Lord Ruler's journal, and it was in another language, so someone translated it, and she's been reading like all the journal entries, but she hates reading so much. So she's just like so over having to read this journal. Her love interest, he's a big reader, so he always has these books, and like when they're hanging out or when they see each other, he's always reading, and she's like, ugh, why are you always reading? Like, she's just so over reading, and it's very funny. I think I'm enjoying the chapters where she is like going to all of these court balls, more than some of the other chapters because I love court politics. I'm very nervous. I'm very curious to see what is gonna happen now in the last 100 pages. I'm scared. I have a couple theories and predictions, but I'm prepared to be surprised by things. I feel like things are about to happen, so I'm gonna film myself reading the last like 50, 60 pages of this book and get my real-time live reaction. I finished The Final Empire this morning. I am very pleasantly surprised with this book. I think it's obvious that I really enjoyed this. I've been going back and forth on what I think my rating is gonna be. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars, maybe like a 4.5. It's somewhere in between there. I enjoyed it way more than I ever thought I was going to. I loved Vin as a main character. I'm so interested in her journey. The magic was really, really cool. It was a little complicated and hard for me to like fully grasp in the beginning, but then once I got it, I was really into the whole magic system and all of that. And I know that like magic systems and world building is Brandon Sanderson's like strong point from what I've heard and what I've now seen. This was obviously very different from Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is the only other Brandon Sanderson book that I've read. It's not so different to where I'm like, it feels like a completely different author. So many people were like, oh my god, Tress feels like it was written by somebody else. I disagree. I feel like I saw a lot of elements from Tress in here. The humor, for one thing, is something that I was very surprised by. I found Tress to be very funny and like very much more on like the comedic Princess Bride end. I also found this book very funny. Like there was a lot of really funny moments, which I wasn't expecting because this definitely has a darker tone. The last 100 pages, chef's kiss, perfect. If I was just rating the last 100 pages, it probably would be 5 stars. But the first 500 pages was a little bit of a struggle, not in a bad way, but I actually have been reading this for a month. Which is not normal for me. Normally I read books in like 1 or 2 days. And in between reading this book, I've read 7 other books. I feel like until I got to that last 100 pages, at no point did I feel a sense of urgency or like I was super excited to pick up the book and like, oh my god, I have to know what's happening. So I think that's part of the reason why it took me so long, because while I was reading it, I was enjoying it. But then the second that I would put it down, I never was like, oh my god, I have to know what's gonna happen. Again, until the last 100 pages. The last 100 pages I loved. I was very shocked by a lot of the things that happened at the end. I obviously got very emotional. There were things that I saw coming and then things that I did not see coming at all, and I'm so curious where this story is gonna go, what's gonna happen in the next book. I definitely will be continuing. So I'm really glad that I finally read this because I feel like this is one of those like extremely popular series that I've just always avoided. So I think I'm gonna land on a 4-star. Now I feel very invested in the story. I have a feeling that like the next book or the third book could potentially get up to 5 stars. Or even if I like reread this, I feel like I could enjoy it more because I'll be able to like fully get into the story right away. But I had a great time and I'm so glad that I finally read this for this video. So I have already finished The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is a very quick read. It took me only like an hour. I don't know that I liked it. I was expecting to love it. I don't know that I did. Basically what this is about, it's about a man who is returning to his childhood home to attend a funeral. And while he's there, all of these memories from his childhood start resurfacing, where he was friends with this girl and they would go to this lake that she called an ocean. So it was the ocean at the end of the lane, and a lot of very weird, bizarre things happened. Being back there is now making him remember. I don't know, here's the thing about this book is I really liked the ideas. There was a lot of very interesting things that I was like, wow, that's really cool. It got super weird, which I love, but I just found it boring because the main character was so boring and dry. I do think that the conversation in here was interesting, like the idea of repressing traumatic childhood memories. Also the way that memory can play with you and you're not really sure what's real or like what has been invented from the mind of a child. All of that was very interesting. It was just boring. I don't know how else to explain that. Like, it was just boring. This is my thing with Neil Gaiman. I love his ideas and his concepts, but his actual writing, I don't know if it fully works for me. Like, I love his adaptations. All of the movies and TV shows based on his works, 10 out of 10, amazing. Stardust is one of my all-time favorite movies, like all-time favorite comfort movie. Love Coraline, Good Omens, Sandman was really good. The books of his that I've loved are actually his graphic novels, but his actual like books, his actual writing just never really clicks with me, despite the fact that I love his ideas. So I don't know, I kind of want to give this 2 stars. That feels very, very low, but I was just bored. Like, I did not care. I will say I did listen to the audiobook, which he narrates, and him as an audiobook narrator is amazing. I think he narrates most of his audiobooks, and his voice is just great for storytelling. I would love to hear him narrate books that aren't his. Like, if he narrated someone else's book, maybe he has before, but I would love that because he's a great narrator. So yeah, unfortunately, I will be giving this 2 stars. Did not love it. Which is sad because I've had this on my shelf for so long and I always thought that I would just adore it like everybody else does. I do have this cute little edition of Stardust, which I'm kind of scared to read eventually because, like I said, Stardust is one of my favorite movies. And I've heard that the movie and the book are like super different. I do want to read this eventually. Also, I just love, it's like so cute, and the cover has this like very vintage fantasy vibe that I'm into. I don't know, I'll read this eventually, but I'm scared because I'm not sure how I would feel about it, especially now knowing that I just don't know that I love his writing. I am kind of in a rush right now. I'm getting ready to go to my parents' house for dinner. I read Thursday Murder Club, and actually my mom read it too, so when I go over there, we're both gonna give our reviews for it, but I haven't even told you guys what it's about. Basically, Thursday Murder Club is following these 4 like elderly people who live in a retirement home, and they're all like super interested in true crime and like solving cases and stuff. So they formed the Thursday Murder Club, where they get together every Thursday and discuss different cases that were never solved and try to solve them. And then someone connected to this retirement home ends up dead, and it seems like it's a murder. So they start trying to solve that. And it's definitely like more on the like end of cozy mystery than like a suspenseful one. It definitely has a very like quirky, cozy vibe, especially with all of these elderly characters in this retirement home. That's the plot. I'm gonna head over to my parents' house and we can get my mom's thoughts on the book, because I believe that she finished it last night. So I finished Thursday Murder Club, and my mom actually just read it too. So we're gonna give our little reviews of what we both thought of it. If you were rating it on a scale, like a 1 to 5.
3.8.
Okay, I gave it a 3, so we're like close.
Well, we have different tastes too,
yeah.
So. I liked, first of all, I liked that it took place in England, so, yes. You know, the settings and everything, whereas they were different, whereas if it had been just like around here, it would have been kind of mundane, but yeah. There it gave it a little... It
was like exciting.
Yeah, a little interesting twist. I like that. Obviously, it's a bit of a whodunit, and so there was the police. Chris and Donna were the 2 main policemen, and I really liked their characters and their relationship and the insight into the police and how they interacted with the Thursday Murder group. And then the other thing I liked was that there's more than one murder or crime.
Yeah.
And in a way they were related, but also in a way they were kind of separate, and the retributions varied from kind of karma to life providing retribution to, you know, actual justice system providing retribution. And so I liked that range. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all neat and tidy, and there was different levels and ranges of the crimes and how they were related and the retributions.
Would you read the next book?
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
I loved the main characters, like the Thursday Murder Club characters, the 4. I loved them. I didn't like that there was so many other characters that you got points of views from. If it had been like pared down just a little bit, I think I would have liked it better. I don't like books that have like a million point of views.
I got confused at some point.
Yeah.
And then I just let it go.
I don't think that I was ever super interested in the mystery part of it. Just that, I don't know, that plot didn't interest me as much. So I think that I would like another, like a second book better maybe if the mystery was different, because all the mysteries are going to be very different. But I like the characters enough that I would definitely read another one. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. Because for a mystery book, I didn't really care about the mystery.
See, that's weird because we read books differently. You're always trying to figure it out, and I'm not. I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I try and figure this one out.
Because I just didn't care.
Well, that's not good.
I just didn't care. I was like, I just liked the banter between all the characters. They were really funny. And I liked when they would just like talk to each other.
So would you read the next one?
Yeah, I have the next book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, book. I got it at the library thrift store for $2.
Oh, cool.
So we both kind of gave it the same rating, but for different reasons.
Makes sense.
I have heard that the first book is like, not like the worst, but that the other books are a lot better. There's a review. We both gave it between 3 and 4 stars. I think I would be more like a 3.5, and then you're a 3.8. Very specific. I did want to add a little bit more on why I'm giving this 3 stars, because I did enjoy it, and like I said with my mom, I am going to be continuing the series. I just really think that for like a mystery book, the actual mystery aspect of this book did not work for me. I mean, like my mom said, normally when it comes to mysteries or thrillers, I'm like super invested and I'm trying to figure out what happened, and that's like very exciting for me. But at no point in this book did I even care what was happening. I really was just here for the characters. I loved the Thursday Murder Club characters, but there were way too many perspectives. We were following way too many people. In total, there was maybe like between like 12 to 15 different characters that you're following, and that was just too much. I was also kind of getting confused on like who different people were. But for the positives, like I said, I loved the characters. It really reminds me of Murder in the Building. So if you like that show, I feel like this has a similar vibe. So yeah, I definitely will be continuing in the series, but this one was kind of underwhelming, not my favorite. But if you have read the series, you'll have to let me know in the comments if the books do get better, because that is what I've heard. So that is the end of this vlog. I read 4 of the most popular books that were on my TBR, and if I was gonna rank them, Ocean at the End of the Lane would be on the bottom, then Educated, the Thursday Murder Club, and then obviously Mistborn is going on the top. So it's funny that the one book that I didn't actually own and that I had to get from the library is the one that I like the most. I definitely will be getting a copy for myself. I am glad that I read all of these because they're all books that I have been curious about for a long time. It's nice that I read them. I would love to know in the comments if you read any of these books, if you love them, if you hated them, what you thought of them. Are you shocked or surprised that Mistborn is my favorite? As always, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon where I post tons of exclusive content. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!